In college algebra, we started chapter 1, and we're starting very basic and just graphing points. This chapter is called Equations and Inequalities. It's a lot of graphing. So starting out, here are some basics on plotting points. Hopefully everyone is familiar with this. Nothing new here from middle school. We're just going left or right for the first number, up or down for the second number. So A is at negative 3, 5, so we're going left 3, up 5. For B, we're going right 2, down 4. For C, we're going right 5. For D, we're going left 5, down 3. For E, we're going up 4. And F is right on the origin. All right, hopefully everyone's good with that. So we have a problem on number 2 that should look like a parabola. Something to always ask yourself before you start graphing it is, what should the picture look like? So because of that square, that x squared, this thing should look like a U or upside down U. And some people mess up with the squaring and the negatives that they plug in, and they get a crazy S-shaped graph, but it should look like a U. This one is very basic. There's no shifting left or right or getting narrower, because there's no numbers attached to that x right there, like in a parentheses or multiplied times it. So this is a nice basic parabola that's centered on the y-axis. So let's start with 0 and pick 3 points to its left, 3 points to its right, and plug them in. If you don't pick points close to 0, then you're going to go way off this grid that I've made. So in the middle column, that left column is a tad too big, but oh well, you could do math over there if you want. But we're going to plug in negative 3. Since it's negative, please use a parenthesis, and that'll save you from messing up. Because if you don't use a parenthesis, your calculator will give you the wrong answer. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, and we get 5. So this far right column is for the coordinate. And that's all we're doing. Plugging in, get the coordinate, and then make our graph. So let's plug in negative 2. We get 0. Plug in negative 1. We get negative 3. Plug in 0. We get negative 4. And if you're clever with parabolas, you already know the last 3 answers because it's symmetric. What we have is the left side and the vertex. Now we're going to get the right side. So we plug in 1. And look at that, we get negative 3 again. Plug in 2. And we get 0 again, and that's all because this thing is symmetric. And let's plot these 7 points. So our vertex is at 0, negative 4. Some of you can look at that equation and just know that, right? Because it shifts 4 units down. And then the remaining points, you go over 1, up 1, over 2, up 4, over 3, up 9. So we have a coordinate here and here, a coordinate here and here, and a coordinate here and here, and look at that, we have a parabola. If you type it into the calculator, it's a nice way to check your work and match it to your graph. If you got a graph like this when you did your math, it means you messed up with the negative. Use parentheses. All right, that's number 2. We moved to the back and we talked about x and y intercepts. So an x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis, and a y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So another way to think about it for x-intercept is that's where y equals 0. The y-intercept is where x equals 0. So there are many ways to get an x and y-intercept. An algebraic way is to plug in 0 for x and you'll get the y-intercept. Plug in 0 for y and you get the x-intercept. But if you have a graph, you can usually see it. And this one's nice because it's right on that cross section. So we know the x-intercept is at 2, 0. And the y-intercept is at 0, -4. On the one to the right, the x-intercept is easy. It is right there. So -1, 0. But it never crosses the y-axis, so let's just say none. For the one below it, we have a cubic function. It's S-shaped. The x-intercept is still pretty easy to see. By easy, I mean it hits right on those cross sections. And if it's ever between dashes, you got to approach it algebraically. But if it goes right through the dash, then you're safe to assume that it's -2, 0, and also 1, 0 in this case. So you can't have more than one. And we have a y at 0, 2. All right, let's do one more problem. Next page. This is a nice basic graph. Notice that x is not being squared or cubed. That means this is a linear function. Should look like a line. All right. Some of you can look at that equation and just graph it with no work. But if I give you a table, please pick some points. And I give you blanks for how many points I'm grading. So let's pick 0 again and 3 left. This is a good rule of thumb if you're ever stuck and can't decide. Then pick those 7 points. If you ever have a fraction next to the x, you sometimes need to be clever with the points you pick. But this one hopefully is very straightforward. We plug in -3, -2, and we get -5. -2 minus 2, and we'll see as we plug in that this thing is just climbing by 1. Plug in 0, plug in 1. Whoops, I wrote that wrong. I was going to say it's not following the pattern. Plug in 2. And lastly, plug in 3. This one I hope is very easy. I totally realize 7 points is a little bit overkill, but it's good practice plugging in. Let's plot those points. And we have our line. All right, hope that was an easy start to Chapter 1. It does get more difficult soon. See you Tuesday. Bye.